Eddie Craig is our guest for the rest of the hour, and we will also go to some of your calls towards the end, so we at least get to the folks that are holding, maybe do a little bit of overdrive. It'll be back with us tonight on the Nightly News. But I know a little bit about the law. I've studied it some, more than most, but most people have no knowledge, so they're lambs to the slaughter. But listening to his radio show that's on here locally and seeing the success he's had in court and the news articles that have been written about it across the state, I wanted to get him in studio as a former sheriff's deputy to basically break down what he learned and just how much the Constitution's being trampled. But I was going to ask you, what would you do if you were Jesse Ventura? They create a law saying you don't get a jury trial. It goes right to appellate court. They don't really tell him that. They let it sit there until the appeal time is over, they're claiming. And I said, what would you do? And you said a writ of mandamus, and that's what I would probably, and I've told Ventura that, and he's like, well, I'll talk to my lawyer. But explain to people what a writ of mandamus is, and just in that case point example, what you would do about that.
Well, a writ of mandamus basically is a writ to a higher court requesting that it enforce its power to overrule a lower court determination regarding its decision. Basically, there are rules and procedures the courts have to comply with, and when they don't, then you appeal to a higher court to direct the lower court to follow the rules. And this is a good indication in this case where the rules are definitely not being followed. The state constitution in any state, according to its own language, is the highest law of authority in that state. So the legislature can't just arbitrarily enact a statute, nor can the court arbitrarily interpret a statute that would violate the Constitution of the state.
And you've been engaging in a lot of pro se research for a long time. I want to, when we come back in the next long segment, break down who you are and how you woke up. But just from a layman's position, the FBI can't stick their hands down your pants in a warrantless situation. And there's special procedures even then if you're in custody. Or you as a sheriff's deputy couldn't. But now they have federal goons out of their jurisdiction, not even sworn, taking over. And now they're going to be and are on the highways. How and why is that unconstitutional, both federal and state, from your research?
Well, just straight up, on the federal Constitution side, since it governs the actions of the TSA, they are acting as a federal agency, then the specific limitations of the Constitution there would apply in the Bill of Rights. No illegal search and seizures, so on and so forth. Your 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights are not up for grabs just because Congress wants to pass an unsubstantiated bill creating a particular agency or allowing some already authorized agency to create a separate department and then create its own rules for it. Its rules and regulations still must abide by the laws and by the Constitution. When it fails to do that, then it needs to be challenged. And the only way we can do that right now is to take these people to court, unfortunately.
And I was told by a TSA agent in Las Vegas that he had an administrative right to stick his hand down my pants.
No, not true. Not true. They only get away with what they're doing for 2 reasons. We acquiesce, and they're holding the guns. That's really the only reason.
So we've entered a realm of tyranny. I mean, this is on its face. And of course, you could go over, how many rulings are there where Marbury versus Madison, they go on and on. Just because government passes some law, if it's not in the Bill of Rights Constitution, I mean, if it's clearly unconstitutional, then it's still illegal. They could pass a law saying black people aren't human again. Does that mean blacks have to follow that law?
No, it doesn't. And there are many, many rulings through the history of the United States from the higher courts stating that the people do not have to accept arbitrary rule or actions by their government servants. They don't. And right now, what we have in the biggest part of this problem is that the servant now believes themselves to be the master. And we're letting them keep that train of thought alive and well by not returning to our true role and getting rid of these people that would institute this.
Tell us about your time as a sheriff's deputy and how you woke up.
Well, for the most part, the individual I was working for, who was sheriff in Nacogdoches at the time, had a very sullied reputation for the way he ran things and the way he did things. My town happens to sit on one of the largest drug highways through the state, Highway 59 and 259, where they center together there in Nacogdoches. And there was constantly drug busts there and so on and so forth. But for some reason, the amount of busts we had never seemed to amount equal to what we contained in the evidence rooms and things of that nature. So it was obvious that a lot of what was being seized was not being kept for the purpose of evidence, nor was it actually being destroyed. So where was it going? You could see things like that. You could see...
Stay there. Let's come back in the long segment, break down your awakening process. similar to mine. I saw the police dealing drugs. Sheriff's deputies and police where I grew up, and I'm like, you guys are drug dealers? And then I'd see them a week later at the school lecturing us about don't use drugs. They were really there advertising, here's the product. Eddie Craig's our guest, a really great constitutional expert, and he's winning in court. And you were getting to the point of you started to notice what you believe was corruption in the sheriff's department with missing drugs. Please continue, and then we'll get into somebody who studied the law, won in court, how we see our Bill of Rights, our Constitution being destroyed, what you would do, and then they now say it's going into all 50 states. You pull up, Army could be there, TSA is always in command, Viper teams, and they're directing families out, jerking them out of cars, searching them, barking orders, basically like people showing up at a Supermax prison. I mean, they want to let you know you're lower than dirt, and the feds are here and they're taking over under civil emergency. This is really martial law is how they're doing it, but continue with your awakening and then just run the gamut of things people need to be made aware of.
Well, as far as the rest of my awakening was concerned, when I've watched all these officers through my career there and everything, writing all these traffic citations, and I couldn't figure out exactly what the offense was other than just what they call a mala prohibitum action, where they just want to simply say that it's illegal because we said it is, not because anybody got hurt or it caused any damage. It's just illegal because we declared it to be illegal. It's very much like the war on drugs. It's just one of the things they want to do to get further control of us. Right now, in these state programs like the driver's license and registration, so on and so forth, it's all about the control of your ability to move. They want to know where you are, when you are. Everything about you is monitored because of these licenses and registrations. The smart tags they use on the toll roads, for instance. Those are going to be coming into the license plates. Those are be coming into the inspection.
Oh, they admit they're already tracking everybody in live time. You've got to get all permission to get a hunting license. They run your background. Oh, hadn't paid child support, didn't pay your taxes. And soon they admit, under Homeland Security, you haven't paid your taxes, which is the Federal Reserve, you won't be able to have a job.
Right, and that's the entire reason why the state started implementing the use of the Social Security number in any kind of licensing, is they used it under the guise of protecting people from unpaid child support. You can't exercise this privilege unless you're current with your child support. Again, just another way of getting into the family.
They're turning the whole country into a giant prison, and to be able to work, it's like you're a trustee allowed out at Huntsville to go sweep the side of the street.
Yeah, pretty much.
And you got all these licenses and fees and face scanning and light pole microphones. That's the equivalent of the chains on his legs.
Exactly. And what we, the people, have failed to understand is that when we created the government, we created them for one specific purpose, to protect our individual rights and our individual property from incursion by outside forces.
Now that's flipped backwards.
Exactly. Now they are the outside force that's seeking to take control of everything that we have.
So roll through examples. Traffic stops, you name it. Break it down.
Okay, for instance, they pull you over, they issue a citation. What most people don't understand about the traffic laws is the commercial nature of those laws. The licensing, the registration, the insurance, all of those things only apply to people that are engaging in transportation. That's the whole gist right there. And transportation, by definition, is the movement of goods or services by carrier, whether that carrier is a public carrier or a private contract carrier. All of those are entities that make their living using the roads as a place of business and commerce. You and I don't do that. We've been duped into believing we have to have.
And by the way, I've told police officers this and they laugh at me, even though it's one of the most adjudicated issues since the 20s. I know you could rattle off the cases all day. They're now saying our guns are a privilege. Driving's not a privilege, or traveling's not a privilege. Owning a gun's not a privilege, but they're telling us it is.
That's true. And again, to me, the adjudication of the issues is not so much the right to travel as it is the deprivation of the right of liberty and locomotion, which is what the higher courts, including the Supreme Court, have adjudicated for decades about the people's individual right of liberty. Locomotion is a necessary attachment to the right of liberty. And they've ruled time and time again that the people we own the roads, not the state. The state is the caretaker we appointed to manage and maintain those roads. And
it's an archetypal image of authoritarian systems, people on reservations, plantations, Roman slave grids, to have checkpoints and the roads turning into militarized systems. That is what it is to live in an occupied country. When you have them, we've shown you military training films where they admit secretly, this is martial law. This is what it's like to live in a third world country.
That's true. And the biggest way they're getting away with the things like the roadblocks and the things like you're talking about is right now everyone is under the impression this applies to me. And because they're acquiescing to that, they're making themselves subject to it. Pretty much everything in the transportation code is done by agreement. I agree to be bound by these rules as long as I'm acting in this privileged state.
And as it's done millions of times, it creates a common law precedent. It's still fraudulent, but from what I've researched in law, possessions 9/10, they are by just way of just what's the term that they use in some of the more ancient common law, that it's a custom. And so they're accustomed. They're getting the cops accustomed. They're getting you accustomed.
Right. They basically have acclimated us to be apathetic in the exercise of our rights. Your rights are what the state dictates your rights are. That's what our kids are being trained in school to accept. That's what the adults are being trained to accept. For those that are actually in law enforcement, believe it or not, there are many of them that don't understand the nuances of what's going on, but they know they don't like it.
Well, let's talk about that, but take vaccines. They've known there's no law, you have to take vaccines. They lie on the news in concert, across the country, the same talking point, say it's the law, you'll be arrested. But really, the school triggers truancy, kicks you out, and then uses the truancy to try to arrest you. When they were lying and kicking you out for something that wasn't a law, they're now engaged in racketeering and fraud.
That's true. That's true. They're actually misrepresenting the law, and believe it or not, Texas has a law against that. If you misrepresent the existence of a law for the purpose of creating or inducing an action by another, that's illegal in this state. It's completely illegal. And no one knows that, and no one will take that penal statute and go after the public servant that's using it illegally in that manner. For instance, one of the biggest things the police use here in Texas to illegally arrest people is either public intoxication statute or failure to identify. Now, 38.02 penal code here in Texas on the failure to identify is very, very specific. In order to be charged with failure to identify, the individual must have already been lawfully arrested for some other crime. And emphasis on lawfully arrested. Here, they try to take you to jail. If you won't produce a driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance during a traffic stop, they say that you failed to identify. But the statute does not require a physical presentation of a physical identity card of any kind. It simply requires you provide 3 pieces of information: name, address, and date of birth, and nothing more. Now, given that, when you are being told you have to provide a physical ID.
By the way, that's international common law. Name, rank, and serial number.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Military status of everything. But again, if I have not been lawfully arrested for something, I'm not even and cannot be required to provide you even with that information. So if you're attempting to take a transportation statute and use it against me as a private citizen, I have not been lawfully arrested. And in Texas,
go back to some of the federal rulings. I mean, I could pull them up on transportation, but I know you'll probably know them from memory. It goes back to saying, well, the trucks are tearing up our roads. We'll charge them a special tax because the general public paid for these roads because they're engaged in commerce, and that's all they're talking about.
Yeah, Chicago Motor Coach versus state of Illinois. You've got, let's see, we have one out of San Antonio here in Texas that is very clear. I can't remember the site for it. But it says very clearly that all of the roads in the state belong to the people, and we have every right to use them with the common conveyances of the day, including an automobile.
Well, that's why they're trying to tell farmers now they can't drive down the side of the road with federal regulations, because they want to abridge that common right of people using the shoulders. Well, that's the Chisholm Trail. I-35 out there was made by people driving cattle. Humans have a right, especially in agriculture, to move down the road.
That's true. But again, this federal incursion into the states is our fault. It's our fault because we're not resisting it. We're not resisting it by going after our representatives that are allowing and giving permission for the federal government to do these things. The people that say they're there to represent us are not representing us. It's just that simple. Can we fix this politically? Doubtful. Why? Because all the politics is bought and paid for already.
But some of it we are reversing. Take Perry with the NAFTA highways. That got exposed and stopped, most of it. His Gardasil, he said it's the law, you will take it, and the legislature called him. I mean, some of this stuff, they're getting so bold that it's going to bring them down.
That's true. But again, as the general public, we have to be knowledgeable about what these people are doing. We need to be as knowledgeable about the laws of our state as they are. So when they violate them, we know exactly where to go after them.
Okay. We're driving down the road. Again, I'm going to have you back in the near future on the show tonight. We can talk for 10 hours. But there's so much to talk about. But let's say I'm driving down the road, or you're driving down the road, and you're going 6 miles over the speed limit. And I turn my lights on. You pull over on the right-hand side. And I come over and I say, license and registration, please. Not that they ever really say please anymore. And then where do you go from there? And then 2 minutes later, I say, mind if I search your vehicle?
Okay. In my class that I teach down at Brave New Books, I have 3 set questions we ask and 3 set actions that follow. First question is what is the emergency and how can I help? We're not going to presume under any circumstances we've done anything wrong because we're not in transportation. So the laws they're using to pull us over for speeding or anything else don't apply. Second question is am I under arrest? Third question is, am I free to go? You cannot get the same answer to question 2 and 3. If you do, something's wrong. We ask those questions to specifically make the record known that we are in a custodial arrest and we know it. This automatically invokes our right to remain silent, not to testify against ourselves, so on and so forth. The courts have adjudicated that aspect very clearly. Very few people realize that Texas law specifically creates the instance of a custodial arrest the moment an officer pulls you over for the express purpose of issuing a citation. Chapter 543 Transportation Code dictates very clearly that the arresting officer can only release the person arrested from custody if the person will sign the promise to appear on the citation. Otherwise, the officer is required by law to take the person immediately before a magistrate. They never do these things. They'll threaten you.
And this is the law.
This is the law. It is right.
I mean, they're so busy always throwing the book at us for nothing. They're just violating it up one side and down the other.
Correct. And that's very rarely why in these wins in court you were talking about that I ever have to go to merits of the case. Why? I will never address the merits of a case that have outstanding due process violations. And at a minimum, the moment a police officer pulls you over on the side of the road, he will commit a minimum of 5 due process violations before that stop ends.
But that's just like them now putting GPS on tens of thousands of people's cars with no warrant. And the courts are saying, yeah, we can do that now. Or the iPhones, the government dialing and enlisting without warrants. They just do it. Or now trying to put tags on all the license plates. I mean, this is 1984. And just 10 years ago, everybody's like, oh, that'll never happen. Now that it's happening, you said a lot of police you talk to, and same with me. A lot of them are good people, and they know stuff's wrong. They don't have all the nuances. They know more than the public, but they haven't really studied it. And, I mean, I challenge them to study just basic history. This is bona fide illegal garbage. Every time the government spies on you without a warrant, it's a felony, state and federal. I can pull it up for people. I mean, this is a big deal. You're going to commit all these felonies. I mean, cops ask they want to search my car, and I'm like, number one, you're not an idiot. Do I look like I use your illegal products? And they start getting mad. And I say, what? The government's been caught over and over again dealing drugs. You make me sick. I mean, what do you say to them when they want to search your car?
Well, if they're going to search my car, they're going to have to break into it. On a traffic stop, the very first thing I do is pull into a private parking lot, not the side of the road. I go onto some piece of private property. I immediately get out of my car, lock the doors, and throw the keys into the front seat. I keep a spare door key in my wallet, which he doesn't have to know. But the only reason they can search your car on a traffic stop is if you are in it. And the courts have ruled over and over again they can do that as a general search of the passenger and driver compartment area to ensure that you don't have access to a weapon that could harm the officer. By getting out of the car, locking the door, and putting the keys inside, you remove any possibility whatsoever of having an access to a weapon inside that car if there even is one. Therefore, you remove any viable explanation the officer could have for conducting a search without a warrant. That's my practice and policy, and it's what I've done every time I've been pulled over. And so far, they will not get a warrant. They cannot hold you to call a drug dog in unless they show up during the period of time when they're actually working on issuing the citation. Then they can take the time to run the dog around the car. Having worked in law enforcement, I know when they key the dog to make him react.
I've talked to cops who admit that Flash will always do it for a biscuit.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's...
Yeah, the things they do in order to find some reason to terrorize the public, a lot of these officers, is astounding. It really, really is.
I only acquiesced once when I was on the radio in about 45 minutes. I was only halfway there. And they pulled me over on 183 back when I was 15 years ago up there. And they wanted to search my Tahoe. And I said, no, I don't authorize it. He said, well, I'm going to get a dog. And I looked at my watch and I said, okay, go ahead. But I'm doing this under duress because I got to get to work. And I said, I don't use your products. And he kind of, as soon as I let him, he just left. And I understand, as soon as I said he could, he didn't want to search it then. And I know cops are actually fighting real criminals all day. So they get this idea of, well, we'll just violate things because we're doing good. But that's how they build these tyrannies. That's how, it's this excuse of we're going to get at the job. I saw somebody comment on my website about warrantless checkpoints, and they said, it was obviously a cop, we're fighting crime and nothing will stop us from getting to the bad guys. And it's nothing like those mindless Dudley Do-Rights whose supervisor's probably dealing cocaine and they don't even know it. I mean, these guys are just, in your experience, from what I've seen, some of the best well-meaning people, goody two-shoe types, are some of the dumbest and most dangerous because they just absolutely believe they're in the right.
That's very true. It's very true. It's all about education, and it's all about the education they didn't get. A lot of these people are chosen because they've been immunized against violations of people's rights. They've been immunized against violence and so on and so forth. So they have a particular mindset about them that allows them to excel in these particular positions. There are many of these people that are there for the ego trip, the power that it gives them, so on and so forth. And then there are those that are genuinely there for the purpose of serving and protecting the public. The day I met you down at the Capitol, I was actually in the process of talking to numerous DPS officers down there about the traffic statutes themselves. And one of the things in the traffic seminar that we sell on Rule of Law Radio is that the book is written entirely about how to read, understand, and research statutory law. We use the Texas traffic statutes expressly for that purpose. And I was explaining to them about what the mission of the DPS is. In Texas, the DPS's mission is strictly to supervise traffic on rural highways and to supervise and regulate, emphasis on regulate, meaning license, registration, insurance, and all this, commercial and for-hire traffic. Now, that's not you and me.
And that, by the way, that's the law. I've read it.
Yeah.
Because you tell police officers, they're like, no. I'm like, would you please read your own penal code? Eddie, you were mentioning rule of law. When a lot of times when I'm driving home at night at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, I always enjoy listening to you. And you're winning court cases, you're doing a lot of other stuff. Tell folks about the website, and they can find more there, archives of the show.
Yes, they can. Our website is ruleoflawradio.com. There is an archive section there on the top banners on the left side. You can go in there and listen to all of our past and previous shows. We are also going to be linking up my traffic seminar material and everything with endlessfrauddetection.com. We're actually starting a new venture where we are going to be directly assisting people with private investigations for a small fee into their traffic citation so that they can get a certified notice to take to court that the traffic citation was issued fraudulently and in error.
Good. And we're almost out of time for the official show. What was it you were talking about before we went to break and I said you'd finish?
The DPS officers down
there. Yeah, you're talking, I was like yelling at them and stuff and very angry because, get the courage up to go storm the Capitol. And a lot of them afterwards were like, no, we agree with you. I guess they don't like their wives being groped either.
That's true. And these officers were actually very receptive to the information that I tell them about the traffic statutes and so on and so forth. A lot of them have received generic training on the issues, but nothing specific, and they'll admit to that. And just so you know, officers out there and attorneys, my seminar book and material is absolutely free to police officers of any kind and to attorneys. Why? Because I'd rather you actually knew the law you're working under for the benefit of the people rather than the revenue officers you've become.
Well, that's what's amazing. A lot of the time they think they're following a law that doesn't exist and they're actually breaking laws.
That's true. They're actually violating many more laws than they're actually preventing the alleged violator from committing. one traffic stop citation for speeding versus 5 due process violations in that stop alone. How many different laws did the officer break?
Yeah, 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Exactly.
Or 5 wrongs don't make a right.
Very well put.
Amazing. We're going to go to break here. Official transmission is going to end right now for AM and FM stations. I'll be back tomorrow, 11 a.m. But we're going to come back, take a few calls, caller who's holding, and a few others. But, Eddie, do you think people are starting to wake up?
I think they are. We just need to increase the number.
That's right. We're starting to turn the corner, but not fast enough. We'll be right back. Stay with us. All right. I want to take a few calls from folks that are holding. I wish I could get to everybody, but we can at least get to who was the last caller I was talking to? And I said I'd go back to him. Yeah, that was Clayton, and then I'm going to try to jam in Pete and Kevin. Real fast, Clayton, go ahead.
And the next thing I want to bring up is to tell your congressmen, senators, and representatives to vote no on the Stop Online Piracy Act. It is bill number H.R. 3261. It is the internet kill switch.
No, they have Congress people admit it. I've scanned over the bill. It just says no due process, no nothing. They just take down websites, whole networks. Just corporation ask, your rights are gone. I mean, they are globally getting rid of due process everywhere.
So yeah, I want to bring that. I want to bring that up, and then also what I wanted to bring up as well is that how you talk about Child Protective Services breaking up families. I actually witnessed that growing up, so I know exactly how that goes. And
again, they're the investigator, so the smart pedophiles go and get that job, and then it's almost impossible for them to get caught. And it's come out over and over again, though. It is just a nest of perverts. Unbelievable scum. Even if they were good people, who would want to be breaking up families and all that and see that every day? That'd be hard to handle. I mean, something's wrong. TSA people, something's wrong with you if you'll grope people all day long. I mean, man, I tell you. I mean, if I was in a supermax prison, I would want to grope killers. This is not a job I want. Something's wrong with those people. Something's wrong with them. I appreciate your call. Kevin in Florida, you're on the air. Eddie, jump in anytime you want. Go ahead, Kevin, you're on the air.
Hey, Alex, listen, I've got some insight for you that you're probably not going to hear from some other people. I want to speak to the sexual abuse, the Penn State fiasco. You know, I was a child of very severe sexual abuse at the hands of an older man. I was sexually abused on numerous occasions, but in this particular instance, it was when I attended a private military academy. And the point that I want to make here is 2 points. One is the fact that what has to be done is you cannot put male authority figures, particularly men that are in prominent positions, in charge of little boys, because it almost seems inevitable. Whether that seed was already in them, Alex, or whether that seed grows as a result of being surrounded by nothing but little boy flesh, eventually the monster comes out. Now, in my case, I was at a military academy. There was an upper school and a junior school. I was in the junior school. There was one man responsible for 30 to 40 military cadets, all boys, and we were grades 5th through 8th grade. This one man was responsible every single year for 20 to 50 kids in his little junior school. And no one ever overlooked, him or what he was doing. And in my case, there were instances where there were other faculty members, there were innuendos, there were rumors that would go around saying, we're not sure about this.
Whatever happened to just Texas justice? Because, I was a vicious at like 13 years old. And I'm not, it sounds like I'm bragging, but I'm not. I'm actually ashamed of it. But if somebody did something like that, first time they turned around, it's ball peen hammer. I'm sorry. I think it gets back to we've become domesticated. People used to be real polite, especially in the South, because you did somebody wrong, their family's going to kill you. And I'm not calling for any of that, but I think this has all gotten out of control because people, a long time ago, if you cheated somebody in business, they were going to kill you. So people didn't cheat in business. Eddie, you got any comments on that?
Yeah, we're being bred to the point of not to challenge any type of authority figure of any kind for any reason. And I agree it's bad.
Well, sir, call me back sometime. I want to hear more about this. It's so alien for me. I mean, I just don't but these people are in positions of power. We'll see you back tomorrow, 11 a.m. and tonight, 7 o'clock, prisonplanet.tv. God bless you all.